My weekend in the Twin Cities was the first time I ever experienced resistance being the culture of a community as opposed to the counterculture. Now, what the fuck do I mean by that? Well, typically, resistance is almost definitionally counterculture. You are countering some sort of larger prevailing culture with resistance. Typically, it's safe to assume that any regime in power has a lock on the things that define culture for a community. And I want to be clear about how I'm using the word culture. Culture being what most people engage with, the way that most people interact and run their lives, which is a little different from how we often use the word culture in reference to like a local arts community, who often is more counterculture than culture. It is the way that those artists are different from the surrounding culture that makes them feel like a cultural experience. That's why we use the word that way. And I think that was the most interesting thing that I observed during my time in the Twin Cities, is that it wasn't just who you would expect to be pissed at ICE being there, outwardly resisting. It was everyone. As in, the resistance had moved from the counterculture spaces into the mainstream culture of the local community. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone in the Twin Cities are a monolith about these types of things. Of course, there are conservatives there as well. However, they are not public. They do not have messaging that is readily visible anywhere to be seen in the community, which makes the whole issue of ICE coming in and kidnapping people not even feel like there's a debate going on there. It is simply that the community does not want it and is going to stop it, which means even though there are certainly people there who are actually in support of ICE and the terrible things that they are doing, they can only express that support quietly. They are restricted in their ability to tangibly support ICE in any meaningful way. And so they mostly don't, which feels like it stands in stark contrast with how most communities are operating right now. Yeah, right now in Iowa, I am worried about ICE coming in or any federal agents coming in and trying to hurt me, my family, and my community. Of course, I am worried about that. But I am also worried about trying to resist that and being called out or attacked by my neighbors because I don't know where they stand necessarily. But people in the Twin Cities right now know where their neighbors stand. And if they don't know where their neighbors stand right now, then they know where their neighbors stand. You could not go a block without seeing a business with signs in the window saying, ICE and federal agents are not welcome here. You could not go a block without seeing homes full of posters saying, fuck ICE and ICE out. Almost every business that I went into had a table with informational pamphlets. Now, the spiciness of that information ranged from business to business, but basically everywhere I went had one of those things. And sure, I'm probably going to more progressive places than maybe the absolute average person, but it's not like I only go to like communist bookstores or something like that, even though the Twin Cities is a great place to find communist bookstores. And I know a lot of that might sound like fairly meaningless messaging. It's just posters and pieces of paper. It's not doing anything to actually stop anything on its own. But here's what differentiates those types of things from the age old call your congressman sort of activism. All of those materials were not directed towards a politician. Nothing was trying to demand specific politicians do fuck all. Everything I saw was saying, if you are an ICE agent, get the fuck out, or we will handle you. Or it was saying, hey, are you a member of our community? Do you need help? Do you want to be engaged? Here's how you can do it. Here's all the information. Here's all the emails. This is who you can reach out to. We'll get you connected. All of the material was not about getting the government to do things for them. It was about how do we organize to do things for our fucking selves. And sure, I would not be surprised if a lot of that organization gets accidentally or almost haphazardly used to elect politicians that are more willing to take action on these types of things. But that would be a byproduct of these efforts, not the objective. The objective is planting seeds and growing networks of people who are ready to act when action is required. I think one of my favorite informational flyers that I saw was a flyer explaining how to start setting up your own community barricades. And it was genius. They were getting people on their own blocks to get together with their neighbors and form these barricades out in the road, actually blocking the street from traffic. And then, as each car comes up to the barricade, they would check in and say, hey, are you ICE or are you a civilian? And once they figured out which was which, they would wave the civilians on, say, hey, have a great day. But if they were ICE, they would not let them move. They would record everything about their vehicle and send it into a database. They made sure that only community members could move through their community, as well as, guests who were friendly, like me, from out of state. And if you're sitting there thinking, like I was, how are the police not showing up and taking these things down? And the answer is they would. The police would show up and say, hey, you can't be doing this. And everyone would go, okay, thank you, officer, and take it down and go home. And then as soon as the police left, they would go back out and put it all back up again. And the flyer was explaining exactly how to do it and who to reach out to if you wanted to make sure that you could be part of a larger effort to get that done, which is really, really cool. But what is really important is that that sort of effort is not possible unless you have all of this other communal organizing done first. You see, almost everyone in the Twin Cities right now is in some sort of neighborhood group chat where they are able to plan and discuss how to implement these things. But the thing is, the only reason why people were willing to get into those group chats in the first place is because they felt like odds are basically everyone else in their community were going to be in them too. And they felt that way because when they looked around and realized basically everyone had signs up and basically everyone was saying the same things, they felt safe to engage in their community. Which tells me the takeaway is that's what needs to be done first. That's what we can be doing to prepare in our own communities. Unless your community is being fully occupied the way that the Twin Cities are, and there are a few, but most of us are not seeing that sort of repression, we need to start with the messaging first. Odds are, if I were to walk outside right now and start talking to all of my neighbors and say, hey, let's start putting up ICE checkpoints on our street, they would look at me like I was fucking crazy. It doesn't matter if that tactic is a good idea. It's not functional because people won't get on board with that. We don't have that relationship yet. We don't have the infrastructure. But even more importantly, before we can create the infrastructure, there has to feel like there's a need to create the infrastructure. Otherwise, it just feels like you're wasting your time and resources in a world where people don't have time and they don't have resources. So what we should be doing now is laying the groundwork so that when people feel like it is worth their time and resources, they feel like they are able to reach out to their community members because their community is very loudly and proudly against the bullshit that's fucking happening. And literally each and every one of us can participate in actions like that. If you have a printer and some paper, you can start making flyers and get shit out in your community. It's the type of thing that doesn't feel like it's going to make a difference until it does. And I can tell you, people see those things, they respond to them. I saw a flyer in my town the other day that said, abolish the secret police, with ICE at the end of police underlined. And that made me feel a little safer and more secure with my opinions in my community. If you want to be more creative, put together informational pamphlets, put together flyers about how to record ICE and how to respond and how to observe and how to make sure that people are able to protect their community members at least a little bit more than they otherwise would have. Because remember, it is not about convincing other people to use the tactics that you think they should. It's making sure that when they get to that point where they feel like your tactics are what need to happen, they know who to reach out to, and they know they're going to be supported by the community when they do.